Hey there, I'm David Benites, and this is Extreme Vocal Institute. And today we're going to be doing something a little different. Right here in front of me, I have a very, very anciently old YouTube video of one of the first shows I ever played in one of the first bands I was in. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do a reaction video to myself for a couple of reasons. One, because it's always good to laugh at yourself, at least a little bit. And two, because especially in the rock and metal world, when it comes to vocals, it's hard to tell where this comes from inherently, but we all have and put on ourselves this expectation like we're supposed to already know how to do this stuff when we get started out. And then, especially in those first couple weeks, first couple months, even those first couple of years, it's very easy to get overly frustrated at ourselves for not knowing everything yet. Like we should have the entire puzzle already figured out, when the fact of the matter is we only pick up those pieces over time. But before I get ahead of myself, we're just going to dive right in here and we're going to check out how I started out. This was April of 2010. Here we go, synchronized headbanging. But what's important here is this is only a few months after I learned how to scream at all, which I also did right here on YouTube. And like many at the time, I got some things right, but I also got many, many, many things wrong in the beginning, and I'll show you what I mean. But I'll shut up for now. Let's go. Oh boy. Oh, bright red tank top and big block text. Here we go. This might be sound check. I'll save you guys the time here. Uh-oh. Oh, what even is that sound? Yes. What was the jumping? Oh boy. Yes. There it is. So before we even really get into the song here, this was that time when I was 16 that I learned what a hair straightener is, and I'm so sorry to everyone that has to see this now. I promise it will never happen again. 2, the first thing you'll notice is to let out that first low scream, I essentially bent in half and did the super typical double hands on the microphone thing. Now, what that's doing is it's making it so I'm having to really squeeze my way into the sound, and you can hear that it's so strained out there. But I was only 16 at the time. And when we're kids, like I say all the time, our bodies behave like rubber bands where you can essentially do almost whatever you want and it's so quick to just bounce right back. So many people don't realize how bad that can be for you until years later when it starts to catch up with you, which for me it did. Like I started to notice after a couple years getting kind of tired in the abdominal area and getting a little winded easier. And as soon as I made it a bit more upright, things got a lot better. Let's keep going. Why am I just standing there? Why are we all just standing there? I think I forgot the words of the song even during the set. The hopping, why between 2007 or 8 or whatever, and then 2010, 11, 12, why was the weird out-of-time jumping so huge? I don't understand why we saw that and we're just like, yes, I'm gonna do this. Anyway. Oh, here comes a breakdown. Oh, let's hear it. So, there is something I did get pretty on from the beginning, and this is because I had a bit of a background with music already at this point. I had been playing trombone for a very long time, and part of playing a wind instrument is the posture. So even though I was doing a lot of the bending over, which isn't great, everything from about here up was pretty okay. Like, I wasn't like throwing my head around while vocalizing, even though when I'm headbanging, I look like a little rag doll that weighs like 7 pounds. But apart from that, I'm actually keeping my head at a pretty all right angle, which is part of why from the get-go I could do the typical like low, 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 high, high, high thing that was so popularized at the time. Now, with the performance aspect of this, one thing that is very easy in the beginning to get caught up with, and you can see a bit of the nervousness here, is the feet being totally rooted into the ground. Like you have your assigned little square that you got to live in and you just don't leave that box. It's important to utilize the space. This is something I talk with students about a lot in terms of live performance, making sure you're utilizing the full amount of space that you have available to you. And even though this is a little stage that was built that day in the lobby of my high school at the time for a benefit show, there is a little bit of room to kind of run around there, and it would have been possible to kind of maybe even run onto the floor if I had wanted to, because there don't appear to be any kind of monitoring anywhere. I don't know how we heard any of what we're doing, and it's just disappearing into the caverns of the chemistry wing, so it seems. But it's important to utilize space. That's what I'm getting at. Oh, zeros. I like how I keep raising my hand with the highs like I'm trying to ask a question. Honestly, little things like that are something I still do. Like in terms of like doing like the more sinister kind of voices, I tend to gravitate towards more dramatic kind of movement. And I learned later on, if I relax into that, it actually helps to open up the chest cavity a little bit, to kind of channel your motion through the arms and legs a little bit, instead of just like contorting the neck and face and jaw when you want something to be intense. Now you can see here I'm definitely yanking into things. Like my mouth is just tight and all the way open, which is part of why when you hear the screams, there isn't a whole lot of variation within them. It's just this ah kind of sound. I don't even know what that overtone is I'm hitting there. And it's weird. I remember it coming out of my mouth like this, but even if I tried, I could never recreate how I used to do this when I was 16. And I think that's for the better. There it is. Smack your forehead on the ground. There it is. Oh, and the stop. More out of time jumping. Mind you, the people running this show and all the sound and everything were the people that ran the public access channel in the town, and they had no idea what any of this stuff was. So they just kept messing with the levels because it was essentially like one like 60-year-old dude and then a bunch of middle school students like running around like chickens with their heads cut off, just not knowing what to do with anything, and they just kept riding the vocal fader like, what do I do? Which is why the volume keeps cutting in and out. 2010, high school. And I will say, a big reason why so many of us had so much trouble in those, because we all remember those really small, really terrible shows that we all have to start out playing before we end up doing more of what we envisioned in the first place, and then what we can potentially go on to do after that. It's usually weird sound setups, like I was just saying. Like, there's no way for anyone to hear what's going on, and especially at a younger age, we don't think about all these different variables, and it's super easy to just push, hammer away into everything it is that we do, and then we accidentally learn to push too hard. Part of why you see me doubling over and doing like the big, throw my whole body forward thing so often is because I'm trying to use as much force from my lower half as possible to send that sound out because of what I was used to at the time. I was trying to make myself loud enough to be heard, even though there's a microphone in my hand and it's being electronically boosted through the sound system. I was still acting like I had to be the loudest thing in the room. And that's something that's very important to let go of. Otherwise, you accidentally become what I call a pusher, and you just push for the sound constantly, which inevitably creates a lot of wear and tear in the throat. You might not notice it all at once, but it does catch up with you. I had, in about, say, 2013 or so, like a weird couple months where all my high screams were just gone. And I was just freaking out for months, not knowing what was happening. And as soon as I started to rebalance and reposition what I was doing, suddenly everything came back to me. I realized that the way I had been doing it was wrong. And I was doing myself a disservice. I was doing more harm than good by putting as much of myself into the performance. And that's not to say that you don't want to put yourself into the performance, because like you'll see here, it's so high school in that all of the musical moments are just rooted in place. Oh my God, don't look at me. And then anytime there's no vocals, it's wet noodling. You want to make sure you are putting yourself into it and that you're letting yourself put on an honest performance. So it's not like you're just trying to impress. When we're younger, there's this huge, especially for people starting in bands for the first time, this having something to prove feeling that really takes hold of a lot of our actions. And it can make it so you do kind of ridiculous things like, I don't know, wear pants that are way too tight, and block letter tank tops and straightened hair. And if you end up loving that forever and that's your thing, that's fine. But oftentimes when we're young, we're still figuring ourselves out. We see something, we latch onto it, and we see if that works with who we are initially as people and who we are like at heart. And sometimes it takes a couple years to figure out what that is. Like I know I went through a lot of different looks that all of you are probably now going to scour the internet for. But, wow, I'm going to regret that later. But it's important to let yourself go through these things so that you can inevitably get to that point where you become comfortable with who it is that you are in all of this. And let yourself channel that through your performance. And then a lot of what we do vocally becomes a lot easier from that standpoint as well. And that's something that took me a couple years to figure out. But when I did, couldn't have been happier. Oh boy. And jumping. At least that one was in time. You'll also notice I'm doing a lot of the flap like a bird, fly away kind of elbow thing that, for whatever reason, a lot of the more modern heavy music was doing at the time. Like with every syllable, everything had to be like this because of what we were seeing. Or little moments of what we were seeing that we thought, oh, I just have to do that the whole time and then I'm good. Not quite. So the other thing you're hearing is I'm leaning into every single syllable that's going on because I'm squeezing independently on each of them versus with phrasing kind of just letting it ride all on one breath and keeping the pressure consistent, not pushing on every single syllable that we say, because that's not how we communicate and talk. And so much of this is all about communication. Again, another thing I speak about with students and in our EVI online program all the time. It's all about communication. And you want to make sure you aren't doing things when you're performing to inhibit your ability to actually communicate, which it's really easy to get caught up in the way you're moving in the beginning and just do way too much. I look lost, like I don't know where I am. Oh, Actually, I know what that is. I still do that. Like when I feel like a little bit lost, you can see my eyes kind of dart over to like one of the guitar players a little bit to see what their fingering is, so I can be like, okay, I remember the part now. Because if I remember correctly, this iteration of this band rehearsed, I think, once, maybe ever. Which is the other thing when you're starting out. If you're going to start performing, please do your best to practice at all, just bare minimum, but definitely more than once so that you remember what the songs are. Now, I didn't write this song, vocals or melodies or anything. This was just one guy that kind of came and left, and then we started something else after that. But to that token, like, you can hear that it's kind of a mess a little bit, which is okay. You're allowed to be a mess. Why not do what you think feels right in the moment? Because it's the only way that we learn. But it is important to have that, at least that sense of grounding in terms of what you should be doing next, and not getting so lost in the moment that you then forget what you're doing immediately afterwards. Now, that is a super ADD thing, which is definitely me, and I know many other musician types out there. But trying to do your best to rehearse and go through these motions and play everything musically at least more than once so that you can have that sense of togetherness with those first couple of bands that you form, at least to a degree. I love the crowd, by the way. Can we look at the fold-out tables real quick? And the baby grand piano on the floor? Oh, I had to do hopscotch and I almost fell and ate it just now because of some applause. Having a crowd in front of you does take some time and getting used to, and I definitely had crowds in front of me from playing trombone and other kinds of music before this, but this was again the second show I had ever played ever. The first one was also at the high school, and this was one of the larger crowds we had played to. It looks like there are 2 people there, but I promise there are more than 2 people there. There are at least 20, and they're kind of packed in the back there behind the tables because everyone was too afraid of what we were going to do. Too afraid of that to get too close to what was going on. Now, there are going to be some shows where, as you get more people showing up, it is easy to get a little inward feeling and a little stressed out, and it's important to try and just let go as best as you can. Here we go. Oh, I thought that was going to go somewhere, but it didn't. Oh, and I forgot water on stage, and you're watching me. Am I about to talk? Oh, no. Oh, wow. There were like 80 people there. Just kidding. Did I just woo? Okay, so that's an issue there. You could see that I'm a bit too tired to even speak after one song. That's something to look out for as well when it comes to the amount of effort you're using in the moment. Even though shows aren't happening right now, when you're practicing on your own, or if you are getting together and practicing with a band, or practicing along to music, wherever it is you're doing this, whatever it is you're doing, you want to make sure you can build up the stamina to at least get through a couple of songs before you start to feel that point where it starts to go a little downhill, which is kind of your body telling you, hey, cool it, chill it, let's slow down for a moment, maybe stop, take a break, or maybe it's just time to be done for the day. In the beginning, it's super easy to just get excited about what it is you're doing and go full steam into, again, like we're seeing, every single syllable, double cupping the mic, which you're not supposed to be doing either, but that's a whole other thing. But when you're using that much energy, it's super easy to burn out very quickly because these muscles and tissues in the throat are super, super delicate. So when doing this for the first time, also make sure that you aren't getting so stoked on what you're doing that you're using every ounce of energy that you have, because nothing we do vocally requires that. Let's see if we say anything. Oh my God. We're gonna keep going.
Oh, wow.
So you could hear
From my tiny little teenager voice that everything was super locked up here.
And that's definitely a big thing that happens with a lot of people at first, because it's super easy to get locked up when doing these sorts of things. And even though my voice wasn't, even my speaking voice didn't sit where it does now back then, my voice sounds pretty tight there. And it sounds tight because everything's so used to just compressing to get the sounds out. And you'll hear in a moment, the screams will kind of have that feel too. Oh, super clean sounding. Oh my God, it's just so much. Oh, we did this in front of people. More out of time jumping. Bass feeding back. You can also see I'm doing so much of the head forward thing, which is not great. I didn't start doing that, but you're noticing me doing that into the second song here. Tension, tension, tension. Eventually, I figured out how to keep relaxed, and that let the highs fly out a little more accurately. And this happens a lot too in the beginning, that kind of feeling where you have to like cross your fingers and hope for the best, as opposed to opening your mouth and knowing what it is you're going to get. It's important to know yourself. And even though we're still developing during this time, it's important to practice on our own as well a lot. Even not with music, just so we can hear our own voices and start to get familiar with what's actually happening in the moment, so we don't just become super punchy all the time, like I clearly was. And we're lost again. So many long drawn out sections. Oh, here comes the breakdown. I remember no part of this song in any way. Oh, I thought something broke for a second, but it was just going to the guitar alone section, but everything is so wrong here that it just sounds like everything stopped. But the other thing you'll see again is just the amount of energy versus no energy. I'll talk about that for just a second here. When you have your first band starting out, one thing you want to make sure is that you're all excited about what it is you're doing, which is definitely a difficult thing at first. You're kind of just, like any band in high school, you're just kind of working with and playing with whoever says yes. Or if someone's like, yeah, I have a bass guitar in my closet, I can play bass. Cool, what do you listen to? Fish? Like, there are going to be things like that where stuff just doesn't work out. But that's okay as long as you can kind of put the pieces together over time. More cheering based on nothing. Drinking water mid-song. I do still do that, but I'm way less awkward about it now. Stay hydrated. Oh, God. And right back in. And we are approaching the end. I'm clearly working so hard on such a fast part, and the sound people are just so afraid that everything is essentially off at this point, and you can no longer hear anything for the remaining 2 minutes of the video. So I think I will spare you guys pain, the rest of the pain that you would be enduring from this video. Now, some takeaways. Whew, that's a lot. I have not seen this since around 2010 when this got uploaded by whoever was filming this. I don't even know. It's crazy what happens over the course of 10 years, especially when you're consistent. Consistency is definitely key. If I had taken a really long break from vocals between then and now, I would not be able to do nearly the amount that I'm able to do now or explain it in the ways I do here for you guys on our channel if there had been a big gap where I was just doing nothing. Even though it's ridiculous and I'm doing the out of time jumping and why are my pants purple? I don't know. Hair straighteners, leaning over, way too much force. You can tell that I'm having a really good time, which is really cool to see again. Just kind of that youthful excitement behind learning how to do this stuff for the first time. It's important to remind yourself why you're doing this in the first place and what kind of grabbed you about it. And that answer is different for everyone, and it's a very personal thing for all of us. And even the act of learning metal vocals, like you guys searching things and coming here to our channel in the first place, that's a very personal experience because we all have our own reasons for it. But it is good to look back every once in a while and remember why. And kind of, if you have the ability to, look back at the terrible 480p terrible camcorder footage that is your past. And just remember what you're doing this for and why you love it so much. And again, I loved it then. I love it just as much now. And I was consistent the whole time. I really never stopped, and that is what got me here. So if there's any kind of takeaway, regardless of how ridiculous you are when you start out, stay consistent, stick with it, and maybe, just maybe, it isn't just a phase. Thank you all so much for watching. If you liked this video today, give us a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel because we'll be going over lots more vocal stuff as we continue forward. And again, thank you all for bearing with whatever this is, and scream responsibly.